They say you never know who is holding a knife behind their back until you turn your own. I am the dragon of the East, a man who controlled the city's pulse with a single nod. But power breeds shadows, and my shadows were growing hungry. To find the traitor, I had to die. I orchestrated the harbor blast, shed my $10,000 suits, and crawled into the filth of the slums. For 30 days, I lived as a man with no name, no money, and a shattered memory. I watched my most trusted lieutenants walk into my shack. I watched them spit on my floor. I watched them mock the beggar who once gave them everything. I felt the cold steel of a pistol against my temple as my protege whispered that I was a pitiful waste of skin. He didn't realize that while he was playing king, I was counting every insult. He didn't see the hidden cameras or the silent army waiting for my signal. He saw a broken man. I saw a list of names that needed to be erased. My watch just beeped. The 30 days are over. The amnesia is gone. And now, I remember everything. Before we go on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and allows us to keep bringing you more engaging stories to brighten your day. The city of Seoul was draped in black, mourning the fiery death of the man they called the Dragon. While luxury cars lined the streets for a funeral that featured an empty casket, I sat in the shadows of a rotting tenement, the stench of damp concrete filling my lungs. My name is Kang, but to the world, I am a ghost. To the local street thugs who just kicked down my door, I am merely a broken amnesiac with expensive tattoos on a worthless body. They surrounded me, their laughter echoing off the peeling wallpaper as they looked for the legendary fighter who once ruled the underworld. They wanted to see if the monster had truly lost his teeth. One thug swung a lead pipe, striking my ribs with a sickening thud. I collapsed into the dirt, coughing up blood, my vacant eyes staring at nothing. I could have killed them all in 10 seconds, but I stayed down. I felt every kick, every insult, and every drop of spit. I endured the agony in silence, a predator wearing the skin of a victim. They left me bleeding in the mud, convinced the king was dead. They were wrong. The morning sun crawled through the cracked window, illuminating the dust motes dancing over my bruised knuckles. A heavy thud announced the arrival of Lieutenant Kim, the man I had plucked from the gutter and turned into a millionaire. He didn't come with a doctor or a coat. He came with a briefcase and a smirk. Kim paced the small room, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the rotting floorboards. He stopped before me, grabbing my chin and forcing me to look at the ink climbing my neck. "The Great Dragon," he mocked, his voice dripping with venomous pleasure, reduced to a brain-dead dog in a kennel. He slammed a stack of legal papers onto my makeshift table, demanding I sign over the syndicate's real estate empire. I stared at him with hollow, blinking eyes, letting a line of drool escape my lip. As his frustration boiled over into a scream, I lunged forward with a clumsy, shivering hand. I accidentally knocked a jar of filthy water over the documents, drenching the ink until the signatures were illegible. Kim roared, striking me across the face, unaware that the hidden lens in the wall had just captured his ultimate betrayal. The scent of expensive jasmine perfume hit the room before she even stepped inside, a cruel contrast to the smell of decay. Mina, the woman I once intended to marry, stood in the doorway looking like an angel in a silk dress. She didn't offer a hand or a tear. She looked at my battered face with pure, icy disgust. "You look pathetic, Kang," she whispered, her voice devoid of the warmth that once fooled me. She knelt beside my chair, not to comfort me, but to confess. With a chilling smile, she admitted she was the one who primed the harbor bomb, trading my life for a seat beside my greatest rival. She leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear, mocking the love we once shared. Before standing, her eyes locked onto the vintage gold watch on my wrist, my father's only legacy. She wrenched it from my arm with a violent tug, sneering that a beggar didn't need to know the time. She tossed me into the mud outside the door and walked away, her heels clicking a rhythmic goodbye. I lay in the filth, watching her taillights fade, memorizing the weight of her betrayal. The door creaked open, admitting Han, the only man I ever truly feared for his intellect. He stood in the center of the room, his $5,000 suit a sharp blade of elegance against the backdrop of my squalor. Unlike the others, Han didn't laugh or sneer. He He simply watched me with a gaze that stripped away my facade. "The others are fools, Kang," he said softly, his voice echoing in the silence of the tenement. "They see a broken man because they want to believe the king is dead. But I know those eyes. I know the predator is just waiting for the dark." He stepped forward, the cold weight of a pistol suddenly pressing firmly against my temple. The steel was an icy reminder of my mortality. Han wasn't here to rob me or mock me. He was here to ensure the dragon never rose again. He knew that as long as I breathed, his throne was built on sand. My heart hammered against my ribs, yet I kept my expression vacant, staring at the static on the TV. This was the moment of total eclipse. I was a man at his absolute lowest, staring into the abyss of a brother's ultimate greed. The silence in the room was suddenly shattered by a sharp, rhythmic beeping. It wasn't the golden watch Minna stole, but a secondary digital tracker hidden beneath the floorboards. The sound acted as a trigger, and in an instant, the vacant fog in my eyes evaporated, replaced by a gaze so lethal that Han instinctively flinched. I didn't move an inch, even with the gun still pressed to my skull. 30 days, Han," I said, my voice rasping from a month of silence, but carrying the weight of a death sentence. The lieutenant's hand trembled as he pulled the trigger in a blind panic. A harmless click echoed through the room. I smiled, the expression a jagged scar across my face. I had replaced his magazine with blanks before the accident ever occurred. This derelict shack wasn't my prison. It was a high-tech kill box designed to harvest the truth. The walls hummed as hidden scanners began broadcasting Han's terrified face to every loyalist in the city. The predator was no longer in the trap. The trap had finally closed around the prey. I stood up slowly, my presence filling the small room, until Han looked like a shivering child. The air fractured as the shadow guard breached the tenement, their black tactical gear a stark contrast to the surrounding decay. They didn't fire a single bullet. They didn't have to. The mere sight of my elite legion restored the natural order of the city. I watched as Han was forced to his knees, his expensive suit now stained by the very filth he thought he had escaped. We didn't stop there. By midnight, the vulture and the butcher were dragged from their beds, their screams muffled as they were hauled to the grand hall of our headquarters. The entire syndicate stood in stone-cold silence, their eyes fixed on the massive digital screens above the throne. I pressed a single button, and the month of my poverty played out in high definition. The underworld watched as Lieutenant Kim mocked my blood and Minna stole my legacy. I didn't reach for a blade. The look of utter shame on their faces was a far more agonizing execution. I stripped them of their ranks, their wealth, and their names before the very men they had tried to lead. In the world of shadows, betrayal is a debt that must be paid in full. The echoes of the traitor's pleas faded into the cold marble of the hall, leaving behind a silence that commanded respect. I retired to my private chambers, washing away the grime of the slums with water that felt like liquid steel. I donned a custom-tailored charcoal suit, the fabric sliding over the intricate ink on my skin like a second, more powerful armor. The dragon had shed his tattered skin. As I looked in the mirror, I realized that among the wreckage of my past life, only one fragment of true humanity remained. It wasn't found in my boardrooms or my bed, but in the calloused hands of a young floor tiler who had shared his meager lunch with a beggar when the world was watching me fall. I summoned the boy to my throne room, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. I didn't give him gold. I gave him a seat at my right hand, elevating him to the inner circle where loyalty is the only currency that matters. The city began to tremble as the lights in my skyscraper flickered back to life. The king was no longer a ghost. I am Kang, and my reign has only just begun.